Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. Man, we have a great guest on today, Dr. Amy Loden Tiffany. She has a fascinating story. We both come from the great state of Show Me, Missouri. I escaped. Dr. Tiffany's still there, but she's a physician, entrepreneur, a TEDx speaker, author, a mom of five who's redefining what success looks like for the ambitious woman. Now, don't think it's only women only podcast today. We're going to get into some great things that what Dr. Tiffany is sharing and helping women grow can help our male audience just as well. After years in traditional medicine, Dr. Tiffany built a thriving concierge practice specifically designed to help women reclaim their health, energy, and confidence while leading in business, family, and life. She turns her own story of burnout and reinvention into a blueprint for ambitious women who want to lead powerfully without losing themselves. But Dr. Tiffany will tell you the real story behind it all is navigating tough health threats while raising a family and running a business. And that success isn't about doing more, it's about aligning your priorities with purpose. She loves having real conversations about how to build a life that's both high impact and deeply aligned, blending evidence based medicine, mindset, and modern leadership. And she told me she's here today to help our listeners be inspired and equipped to pursue success without sacrifice. Dr. Tiffany, great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted. I think we're going to have a great time.
So, man, there's so much we could unpack, and if we had, like I don't know, 8 hours, we'd have a long, great conversation. So I want to kind of streamline this a little bit with really jumping into what was that personal breaking point for you that having it all wasn't actually fulfilling.
Mhm. So interesting, I would say it's a series of breaking points as I continue to get older and wiser, right? Which we all hope to do. I learned more and more that the things that I thought I was over this mountain peak and onto the next, there's really just a series of mountain peaks. And sometimes those challenges you don't always see until they're behind you. But probably one of the most dramatic ones came after I had been faculty at a prestigious university for several years and just really wasn't finding it as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be, and decided, well, I really want to hone in on this idea of holistic health for women. So I joined a corporate practice with multiple specialties focused on that. And in that context, I had about 3,000 patients. And for your viewers' reference, it's not unusual for a primary care physician to have anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 patients. So it actually wasn't necessarily a larger than average practice. Um, most of the time I had about 15 minutes with patients, and that's okay if you have one tiny problem that you only need 15 minutes to deal with. But
Yeah.
I specialize in adults, and adults have a lot of complex things, and if you're trying to provide holistic health, you cannot do a good job in 15 minutes. So what I found myself doing was seeing patients 8 or 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then going home and doing all the chart work that goes behind the scenes that patients don't see. I want to say it was Mayo study or Mayo Clinic did a study that for every hour that a physician is doing face-to-face contact, they have 2 hours of extra work on the paperwork side. So if you just think for a second, gosh, she was doing clinic 8 hours a day, make it real easy, 8 hours a day, immediately you can see the problem, right? There is no other life. So I would rush home, grab my kids from daycare and from school. We'd make dinner, or maybe we went to Chick-fil-A because that gave me 30 minutes to think while they're in the play yard, right? And then we'd go home and we'd rush through bedtime. We'd maybe get to watch Paw Patrol, and I was charting. So I'm literally at a computer typing all the thoughts, trying to get them out of my head before I forget them as fast as I can, going through all the sticky notes I've piled up through the day. Don't forget this, don't forget that, right? And trying to get all this captured. And what happened after doing that for about 18 months, my oldest was 7. I had a 5-year-old and then 18-month-old twins. And my oldest came down one night and said, she saw me on the computer. She sees me on the computer every night, but her birthday's coming up. And she says, "Are you buying my birthday presents?" And I snapped at her. And I was just like, "No, I'm working. Go upstairs, watch your show. It's almost bedtime." And hearing myself even say the words out loud is like horrifying. The mom in me is just like, totally spiraling. But in that moment, I didn't see that. In that moment, I saw hours ahead of me of work, not getting to bed on time, having to get up early, start the whole cycle over, and this kid's wanting to know about birthday, right? It was just so far down my priority list at that point. And I what I had expected in that response was that she'd go watch her show and she'd be fine, but instead she stood there. And when a child stands there and they're not moving, you're forced to finally look up, right? And so I move my gaze from my computer and I look at my 7-year-old daughter. She's got these most beautiful blue eyes and they are just filled with tears. And the tears are silently streaming down her face. And she finally says, when I make eye contact, "Mommy, why do you love your job more than me?"
Wow.
You
Wow.
could not have shocked me more or pierced me with a different blade, because my entire life I'd wanted to be a good doctor. But the only thing I wanted more than that was to be a good mom. And in that moment, I knew I was neither.
Yeah. Wow.
So you do the damage control you can in that moment, right? You try to reassure, but the pattern's there, the memories, the statement's been said. So I get her in bed, get her brother in bed, and I go down and talk to my husband. And for context, he works from home. So his answer now, in retrospect, makes a little bit more sense. But I asked him, I said, "This isn't working. I can't keep doing this." I told him what she said. And I was like, "I have to retire or I have to do something different." And he's like, "You're not retiring." So I think he just couldn't deal with the thought of me being home all the time. But and we certainly know that stay-at-home moms do a whole lot more than just stay at home all the time. But in his defense, that was like not going to work for his job. So I was like, "All right, I'm going to do something else." And within 4 months, I opened my practice, Vitality Medical. And even in the last 5 years that it's grown, I've had different challenges, right? But that's the one I just described is probably the one that was the catalyst for everything.
Wow. Wow. So, a couple of things that just like light bulbs went off is the professor's position, and yeah, and I've taught uh, at that university level at an institute within the University of Louisville, uh, and so my situation is a little bit different. But I'm betting your experience in that arena was the classic publish or perish mindset and whatnot,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you leave that and go into the corporate medical world, and it's still publish or perish because of all the work, and
Yes.
you and that perish uh, thing is what an incredible heavy weight to bear, and for your 7-year-old daughter to what is it, the straw that broke the camel's back
Yes.
kind of deal. That's incredible. So what fears did you have to face to make that pivot,
Yeah.
both from the university to the corporate to the concierge private practice? Those are three big pivots.
Yeah, they are. So, what many people may not realize is to become a physician, certainly you go to medical school. So, you've already done at least 4 years of college. Many of us had master's degrees as well. So, you go through this doctorate program, but it's very much hierarchical and complete loss of control. So, if you don't do exactly what your superior tells you to do, you don't pass to the next level. And if you don't pass the next level, you don't graduate, right? So, you've got multiple micro things that you have to go through at each level. So after 4 years of that, then you get dumped in residency. And again, it's like, do exactly what the attending says for good reason. We don't want to harm patients, but you're not really encouraged to think beyond what you see in the system. And so if there's anything outside of the system, what we call evidence-based medicine, it's considered not good. I'll give you an example that probably all your listeners can understand is if I told you functional medicine is something that was accepted by university, you would laugh because there's not evidence behind it, so-called evidence, meaning we don't have randomized controlled trials. And so when you've gone through at least 4 years of medical school and 3 to 5 years of residency with this mindset that not only do I have to do exactly what everyone wants me to do to just keep moving forward, but I have to practice this narrative as it's described to me. And anything less than that is being a quote bad doctor. You start to see very quickly why people are afraid to leave the university. And this
Mm.
is true at all university levels. What big research universities and not so research funded, because it's all very much you have to do the next thing to pass. So leaving the university meant that I was suddenly becoming on the outside. I was one of those outside providers that maybe wasn't so good, right? No one ever said, hey, those doctors are quacks. But it was almost this implicit undertone as if they're not part of us, they're not good enough.
All right.
And I was at multiple big universities. So this is like not a one thing. And I've talked to colleagues from across the country. This is everyone's shared experience in all specialties. So this is not an internal medicine thing or a pediatric thing. This is what physicians experience.
Wow.
And when you're used to going in this very ducks in a line, everybody does what they're supposed to, you get to the next level after doing all the little tasks required, it becomes very obvious how success occurs in that context. But that wasn't what I defined success as. And I knew I was unfulfilled and I knew I was getting bored. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to be one of them. But I wasn't brave enough to be on my own. So I joined a big group, and great experience, super supportive colleagues, but frankly, the insurance model was awful. And the amount of things I had to check off, and if I kid you not, if IT had told me one more time, it's just one more click, I might have just actually been in trouble for like violent behavior, because it's not just one more click. It's hundreds of clicks per patient all day long, all week long. And when I know that the infrastructure of IT is so much better outside of the domain of medicine. I can see that in my lived experience. When my dog's vet can call to check on my dog, right? But I can't call to check on a patient because we don't have a way to track who I saw. That's ludicrous.
Yeah.
When the airline can tell me that my flight is running late, but I can't tell my patients I'm running late, there's not a system in place for that. That's nuts. So working inside this highly dysfunctional system, and then trying to meet all the demands of insurance, plus just the normal demands of being a patient. I've worn the patient hat several times. It sucks in our system. And that's me as a physician knowing how to navigate it. So I'm putting my experience and then extrapolating how much worse it must be for everyone else, trying to get through this clunky, broken system. And it was really demoralizing. You'll hear words all the way from burnout to moral injury to describe the spectrum of overwhelm that occurs to physicians in this context. And again, this is not me. This is the normal experience of all your physicians across the country. So it's not surprising to see that so many physicians are finally saying, I'm not willing to do this anymore. And we each get to our different breaking points. Some people after decades of practice. For me, it was 8 years out of residency and 5 years of university, and then 3 years of corporate practice. I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so I had to get to that place where I realized I was done. There was no other option. I wasn't going to be able to continue in the same way. And I had to create something different if it didn't exist. And I didn't see that what I wanted existed. I wanted mom hours. I wanted to be able to have a 9 to 3 job. I didn't want to have my patients have to call an answering service and talk to 3 levels of gatekeepers before they got the answer they needed. I didn't want my patients to have to worry about, hey, is my doctor going to have my back, or are they really trying to just do things for an insurance company? And so for a variety of reasons, coming together in that moment, I was like, this is it. This is my jump. This is where I'm going to take my best leap. And I hope and pray that this is going to work, because literally there is no other option. This has to work. And it has worked. And there's been a lot of tears, blood, and all the things shed trying to get here, right?
Yeah.
But those things had to happen for me to get to the place that I was brave enough to walk away from the comfort and the safety and the familiar.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest mindset, if I look back, is what did I want to be before I went to medical school? A good doctor and a good mom. What do I want to be now? A good doctor and a good mom. But I get to define what that means for me.
Yeah. Wow. One of the kind of the basic foundational things that I'm hearing you say, you're reinforcing this principle of the human condition, if you will, in psychology, is we all want safety, security, prosperity, and control. I mean, those are the 4 fundamental things we want in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and that we have this idealism this expectation of what that's going to look like, whether it's marriage, having kids. I made the pivot from practicing law and got out of it because it's like I'm shuffling papers.
Yeah.
And I was a prosecutor. There was no such thing as justice. Plea bargaining and court schedules and all this. You were just moving paperwork along and not developing personal, not relationships in a hey, come over for dinner, but
Right.
I didn't get to know my victims or the
Yes.
victims' families and homicides, that kind of stuff. And then in kind of all kinds of careers, take your daughter.
Yeah.
Is she had this idealism of what it's like to be part of this family and mommy's daughter, and
Yeah.
she found her little niche that she's the oldest, so she's the big sister, and
Yes.
then boom, she gets hit with disillusionment because this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and
Yeah.
she had to try and resolve it, and her resolution was to finally just have that breaking point and
Yeah.
share with you, and you're
Right.
sharing the same thing of you're going through these stages,
Right.
and so in a kind of there's a resolution factor here. We all have these stressors and we all have these challenges in every aspect of our lives, and our kids have them. And at some point, we have to resolve the the disillusionment, the dilemma we're in, and that becomes the critical point of are we doing making healthy resolutions, unhealthy, and resolving to go, it is what it is not a resolution. That's a
Right.
surrender. You're surrendering, and you just get on the lazy river ride, and I'll go where life takes me. I have no control. So you're giving up. How your foundation. I know was important. I think in your processing everything is how'd your faith impact what you actually
Yeah.
decide how to resolve what you're going through?
My faith for me was probably the foundation, if I can use that word, from which
Yeah, yeah.
everything else came. And there was I would say, several moments where I really wrestled with what does it look like to be authentic in my faith? So I'm a Christian, and what does that look like to be a Christian mother, a Christian wife, a Christian business owner? What does it look like from the way I hear everyone else talk, and then what I claim to believe in the scriptures? And I had to do quite a bit of searching and challenging and debating myself, even like, am I willing to give up what is considered success in order to have a different success? And as Christians, we believe there's an eternal afterlife, right? And that there's
Mhm.
different success defined in the scriptures by God toward which we should live. And I really got to the point that I said, you know what, I don't really care if somebody at my graveside says that I was the best doctor in the world if my kids aren't at my graveside. I don't really care, right, if I have the best business in the state, if my employees say I'm unethical and I'm not living with integrity and the purpose I say to which I'm called. So there was a lot of letting go of preconceived notions that I had accumulated throughout my education. Successful physicians are division and chiefs of the different academic
Yeah.
departments, and they're traveling all over the world and giving speeches and all the different things, and that's fine, but that wasn't my calling. And I had to get to a place where if I believed what I said I believed, then my calling was to take care of my children, my family, my community, and have that ripple effect expanding outward. Part of that, though, also meant taking care of me, and I wasn't doing a good job with just the very basics. I think every parent can say that there was a time where they forgot to brush their teeth or they wish they had taken a shower with a little kid, right? Like, we've all lived that. So I'm not necessarily saying those, but I had to say, if I'm going to say my faith is important to me, where am I setting aside time to do that?
Yeah.
If I'm going to say that my faith is the basis from which I make my decisions, like, where am I getting that from? Is it just years of tradition? Or is there actually something in the scriptures that speaks into this? And so I did a lot of Bible reading and study, and over the last 5 years, have had a tremendous amount of change in how I would practice versus where I started.
Mhm.
A lot of small business owners say it doesn't make sense to give your employees paid leave. I look at what's fair in our community and what they could get somewhere else, and I say, I'm going to at least meet the standard of the secular world, at least, right?
Yeah.
If not exceed it. And those are things that come at an economic cost. And so you have to be able to also articulate that when you have a better half, right? And my husband's like, what are you doing? I have to be able to say, this is what I believe, and this is why I'm doing this. So it did and does play a tremendous impact in the decisions I make. It plays a role in whether I'm willing to write scripts kind of on the sly, like a lot of people actually ask me to do in order to get medicines approved by their insurance company. And I'm like, I can't lie. I'm going to
All
say
right.
what it is, but I'm going to fight tooth and nail for you to get this because I think you need it. And so stepping into that really ugly tension is tough, and I don't do it well every day at all. But I do think that I've learned to give myself grace to keep trying more and to fail forward instead of just saying, well, that was a failure. I'm done. Too bad, so sad, right?
Yeah.
It's what did I learn from this? What do I wish I had done differently? How do I do this differently next time?
Man, that's awesome. You just gave the definition of a warrior servant leader, literally, that you are willing to stand up, show up, and defend what you believe,
Yeah.
and that's a warrior mindset. Whether it's your family, family first, your faith, your employees, your patients, you stand up, show up, and defend what you believe, and then that servant mindset that is like the twin brother to the warrior is that you put the wants and needs of others before your own, and that's incredible. And then that third of the triplets, the third twin is that leadership of you want to be. I call it a life sentence. When I teach, I tell people, "What's your life sentence? What do you want at your funeral? What do you
Yes.
want people in one sentence to say about you and
Right.
your life? What your life meant to them, and
Yes.
and what are you doing to live that sentence?" And that's being a person of influence and impact, and that's the leadership component to those three things. So this may sound like a redundant question, but how do you personally decide then to say yes or no when people are wanting your time, wanting your
Yeah.
expertise, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
What's that standard?
I had to learn to think about opportunities differently. There's a certain cultural phenomena that's happened over the last, we'll say, 20 years for sure, maybe probably longer, where there's this idea of women need to lean in more. They need to say yes and yes and yes and yes and make all the yeses. I think men have always done that too. So I don't think this is actually unique to women. I think this is a human thing, but we want to be accepted in our communities, whatever that community is, whether it's a religious, an academic, our neighborhood, we want to be in, right? And that's God made us that way to connect with other humans.
Yeah.
And so when we're doing things that are threatening, like saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you, or no, that's a great opportunity, but I can't do it, that there's a certain amount that our brain freaks out and says, oh my gosh, you're going to be excluded. They're never going to invite you again, right? And it's like every seventh grader's worst nightmare. And we still have that though as adults, and we forget how that can hijack our decision making process. So I had to really, and I went through a lot of coaching to get to this place of even recognizing that I needed to create a system. I had to have a system that was external to me, that reflected what was important to me. That first started by getting my values figured out. So, what was the thing that important to me? You talk about family first. For me, I can tell you my three things are faith, family, fitness, in that order. If I don't have my priorities aligned correctly in those three things, everything else is overwhelming and negative feeling to my brain. I can't handle it. But when I get those three right, it's a good day. Even on the bad days, it's a good day because those are the things that are aligned in my heart of what's important to me. So the system I developed, I call it the VIP filter, but it's V is for values. Know what your values are. And for our clients, we actually have them go through these worksheets. Most people come to me and they tell me my health is the problem. Their health is the system of the problem. They don't have the system. And so knowing the symptom and knowing what the system lack is, we start with what are your values? What's important to you? What do you hope to gain? And then how do we make that work within the confines of your specific situation? So understanding values. I is for impact. What is the impact? Or use the word influence. What do you want to have as the result of the way you spend your time, your energy, your money. For me, the impact that I wanted to have was to be able to communicate to people that you have value. You have value exactly the way you are. God made you with inherent value, and nothing you could do is going to take or give more to that. You're already 100% worthy exactly how you are. And I find that people need to hear that they are not defined, their identity is not in what they do, it's who they are. And I believe with all my heart that they are created in the image of God. They have value just by being who they are. And then once you know who you are, you can act from that as overflow. You have more surplus. You're not coming at it from a place of scarcity and abandonment. And we have all faced traumas. So I don't in any way diminish what someone says. When they hear me say this, I'm like, well, you don't know what I've gone through. You're right, I don't. But I do know that even that, despite that, you have inherent value and you are here for a reason. And you are worthy of whatever calling you have. So when you understand your values, you can lean into your impact. And I wanted my patients, my children, the people in my church communities to understand that simple truth, because most of us don't understand that. Most of us spend our entire life trying to get to the next level, trying to beat out the other, the Joneses, or to keep up with them, doing whatever it is to have more, instead of understanding that intrinsically you're already enough. And then once you know your impact and your sphere of influence and how you want to give into that, you have to prioritize. It is my firm belief that most people don't have a true problem with time management. Not most of the people I work with. I'm sure people exist like that who don't know time management, right? But how many seminars and books and ideas and conversations revolve around time management in really highly successful circles? Just as
Yeah.
much as in elementary school. And I think the problem is we're taught time management because we understand time. We can measure time, right? It's easy to say this is a 30-minute segment. What did I get done in that time? I firmly believe that time management is not the real problem, though. The real problem is priority management. And when we understand what our priorities are, then the time becomes irrelevant because you're going to focus on the priority. And for me, the priority is making sure that my kids get what they need to do to be successful adults, right? That my time is spent in a way that I can focus on my health and my faith. And when all of those things are prioritized correctly, it becomes very easy to say yes and no. Now, hear me and understand this did not happen overnight. I didn't go to a 1-hour seminar and figure this out, right?
Yeah.
This took years of editing, and I'm still in that process where I will continue to edit and grow and evolve. But where I'm at today is that's the way I make decisions. And so
Wow.
if there's a podcast like this that says, hey, how do you align all the things? I'm in. But if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about a podcast about how to make insurance companies be more successful, no way. It's not worth my
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Some of the stuff you just shared, and I've only come across this just in the last 6 months because I didn't even know who this kid was. But there's a saint. He was canonized just earlier this summer or in September. A 15-year-old died in 2006 from leukemia. Uh, born in uh, born in France, raised in Milan, Italy. Was a kind of a technical internet genius almost. His name's Carlo Acutis, and he was so concerned. His grandmother was sick, and he knew there was something wrong with him, but he never said anything. He didn't want to complain about it because he was more concerned, about his grandmother was having all these serious health issues. Well, what his issue was, he actually had leukemia, and they didn't
Wow.
discover. It was way too late when they discovered it. When I think he lost the use of his legs and died a short time later. But he was 15 years old, died in 2006. He kept a journal and other things. And this is one of his sayings, is that we're all born unique, but sadly many of us die as a photocopy. And I think what you were sharing is that uniqueness, that calling that was a Jeremiah. I knew you before you were conceived, and I consecrated you before you were born. That it once you realize that, accept it, and believe it, then that changes your outlook and how you handle success, how you handle adversity, and things like that. And from my own personal experience in life, because I'm 68 years old, so I've got a whole lot of mistakes that I can say help me grow. But accountability and that whole value thing,
Yeah.
and this is how I had the same thing. Faith, family, friends, kind of
Yes.
what were my thing, and but that's what I articulated as my values.
Yes.
But when you actually hold me accountable to, okay,
Correct.
I hear what you're saying, but I see what you're doing, and
Yes.
and nobody ever called me on the carpet for that, including my wife, and we've been married 45 years. It was the classic "suck it up, Buttercup." Your
Hmm.
husband has this career. I'm working midnights, all this kind of things, and it wasn't until after I retired. I had a 26-year career. Uh, she finally confided in me. For over half of your career, I felt like a single parent because you were on midnights
Yeah.
and not you were missing the family outings, or we go on vacation and you're on your cell phone talking to informants instead
Yeah.
of being with the family. So nobody held me accountable for whatever their reasons were. And I think what I hear you saying is that that's what you've gone through. Your
Right.
personal journey is defining who you are, what you value, and then holding yourself accountable to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So here's a big question for you. And I have not read your books, but so this is going to be an odd question to
No
start
worries.
with. So you wrote the postpartum pivot.
Yes.
Should husbands and fathers be reading that book so they can better understand what their wives, as a woman and as a mother, are going through?
I think that's a really great insight. So, one of the things I tried to do when I wrote the book was to answer the questions I hear. And I'm not an OB, so people are like, well, why are you writing postpartum, right? Um, as an internal medicine specialist, one of the things I see and deal with are all the complications that happen in pregnancy that no one actually thought was bad. Like, we all agree if the placenta is not working, we have a problem. We all
Yeah.
agree if a baby's born early, there's bad news, right? But most of us know somebody or have at least heard of the idea that women can get gestational diabetes or preeclampsia in their pregnancies.
Yeah.
And the way I was trained in medical school was that you solve that problem by delivering the baby or terminating the pregnancy, depending on where in gestation it is. And that's all fine and academic and intellectual, right? But then I actually lived through it. And I had life threatening preeclampsia and ended up delivering our twins at 31 weeks in an emergency C-section where they both came out blue. I mean, it was a very scary situation. My
Mm.
lungs were filling with fluid from heart failure. And in recovering from that, I realized that so many of the questions I had and that my husband and I talked through, it wasn't just willpower and make a plan and get up and get over it. It
Yeah.
really took that connection and that community and him understanding like she actually can't get up and go for it because her heart's not pumping enough blood. And him understanding that when she says she's tired, this is not just because she has a newborn, it's because she doesn't have enough oxygen going to her brain. Like really intense stuff. So, do I think that husbands and even fathers, mothers, loved ones, right, can all benefit? Of course, because there's something in that they're going to always hear, even if it doesn't affect their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more, and that's why I did the TED talk, is people don't know that these diseases actually don't go away. What I was taught in medical school is fundamentally wrong. The medical profession is only beginning to realize this, and most of those who are working in that world are still going to tell you, "We'll just end the pregnancy, either deliver or terminate," and that's going to be the end of the story.
Mm.
But it's not, because the pregnancy was never the problem. The pregnancy unmasked that there was an underlying problem that was
Mm-hmm.
silent and was going to eventually become a problem. And we now know that roughly half of moms who have gestational diabetes within 5 years, half of those moms are going to have type 2 diabetes. 5 years. Like their kids going to kindergarten and they're getting diabetes. And when you think about preeclampsia, 10 to 15% of those women are going to have heart failure before they're even grandmothers, before they just 60. And these are diseases that we can lean into, and we can actually change with lifestyle and habits and have different outcomes, not just for mom, but for her children.
Yeah.
And inevitably, that's going to be her better half, right? Like
Yeah.
the whole family improves. But no one knows that because that's not the common teaching. So, both in the book and in the TED Talk, I'm trying to raise awareness about the fact that there's a lot of things that happen after pregnancy that we don't talk about. We literally ship them. We have this new baby. We take mom and dad and we say, here's a package of diapers. Bye. Good luck.
Yeah.
Call us if you need us. And we're like, what? Right? Like, that is no parenting class can train you enough for taking home your newborn baby the first time. And then the second or the third or however many,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it is totally learning on the go. And then we expect, especially in the business world, we're like, oh, 6 weeks, tick tock, back to work you go. We
Yeah.
give dads maybe a week if they're lucky. So there's a fundamental brokenness in what we expect from moms and dads after a baby's born. But because of who I work with and who I help, and my focus is so much on these moms, is how do we get you not in this black hole where so many of us have fallen into between OB care and long-term primary care, but how do we get you up and out, and how do we help you start influencing your children and changing and healing within your home, because that ripple effect then impacts our communities. And that's where we start to see long-term things like chronic disease not be such an impact. But we're only on the precipice of starting to turn this Titanic. It is huge. It will take a
Yeah.
lot more than just me talking about it.
Wow. Yeah. Oh man, I can. I'm picturing, because we had 5 kids, and I mean, you're like spot on stuff of that pregnancy unmasked certain conditions. When our first son was born, I never knew what the term was. Neither did we never heard of it. We were in our early 20s. But after she went full term and natural delivery, no drugs. She has scoliosis and a spinal fusion and a titanium rod, so she can't have epidurals.
Yeah.
So going all natural, and Ryan comes out, everything's fine, and then suddenly it's like the floodgates open, literally, and massive bleeding. Well, it turns out the term the doctors use is afterwards. I mean, they didn't do a code red, but it was really close. There was a surgical team waiting outside the delivery room door. And the bottom line was, oh, well, you have a lazy uterus. What was that was the layman's term for it, and that is what resulted in the massive. Her blood pressure went like 60 over zero. I mean, it was crazy.
Wow, that's so scary.
Yeah, and then the next 4, none of those were, that wasn't an issue. Yeah, so it's like, okay. So then our oldest daughter, child number 2, she gets married. She's pregnant. She starts having some complications in the beginning of the 7th month ish. And so she goes and sees a doctor and everything. And it's like, okay, you're going to have to go on bed rest. And so she goes on bed rest, but things aren't improving. She ends up in the hospital 2 months before the due date, and they have to do they didn't do I guess they did do a cesarean, emergency cesarean thing. And it turns out, so our granddaughter was born 2 months premature, weighed about 4 ounces, was in NICU and all that. Well, the pregnancy unmasked, her the placenta was separating. One half of the placenta had started to separate as if she had already delivered.
Yeah.
I don't know what the medical term is and all that kind of stuff, but so she is healthy and 19 years old and played high school rugby and lacrosse, and also, I mean, she just a great kid. Our youngest daughter, our middle daughter, is married, but they haven't had kids. But our youngest daughter goes full term pregnancy, and the they're at the hospital. We're there, the birthing room. The other grandparents are there. It's going to be their first grandchild, and they had the internal heart monitor on. And the third time the heartbeat dropped, the nurses go, "Get the doctor now," and they come in, and Doc goes, "OR now, emergency surgery, C-section." Umbilical cord was wrapped around
So scary.
Kieran. Yeah, but they get her out. Everything's fine, and then boom, it was a flashback to 1982,
Yes.
and guess who has a lazy uterus? And the hemorrhaging starts, and they slam. I like the what do you call it? The anesthesiologist goes, "This is the last one," and it was number 7. If this doesn't work, he's telling the OB,
Yeah.
full hysterectomy now.
Yeah.
So they got the 7th one in. It did what it was supposed to do. So she comes out into recovery eventually, back to the birthing room. Everything's fine. We get to go home. Other grandparents go home. Next morning, I call my son-in-law. I go, "Hey, we're on the way over to the hospital. You want me to grab anything for you?" And he goes, "No, just get over here now." So we get there and we walk in the birthing room. There's no bed. There's no daughter. There's a son-in-law who's holding his newborn daughter. And we're like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "That she threw blood clots to her lungs. She's in ICU,
Oh
and
my
she was in
gosh.
ICU for 3 days." So it's like there's so many things, and that you, the mother, you have this relationship and sensations, and when something doesn't feel right and all that kind of stuff. And dads, future fathers, or
Yeah.
expectant fathers are going freaking out. That's why I said is that postpartum pivot.
Yeah.
Or is I think, man, I'm thinking we need to educate fathers as well, that
Yeah.
when your wife comes home, when she's having a bad day, she's not just having a bad day.
Right. Right.
And how can we be more empathetic, more compassionate, and more action oriented to help them through
Yeah.
that period of post birth?
You're reminding me of a story I heard recently, and I actually, unfortunately, this is not necessarily a novel story. It was a mom who was postpartum, and she was, we'll say, 12 to 18 months out, as how old her baby was. And she had, of as like any woman who's had a baby, is wants to lose weight, right? Like, I think one of the lies we tell women is you can get back to what you were. You're never going to get back to where you were because you weren't a mother before this, right?
Yeah,
So like you might be the same on the scale, but your body is fundamentally different. Every part of your DNA is now touched by that pregnancy. And this particular woman had expressed to her husband, "I want to lose weight." And he's like, "Oh yeah, honey, happy to help, whatever." So she is tired one night and eats like leftover birthday cake, something that any one of us would do, right? But he, in that moment, didn't have a lot of wisdom, and he didn't read the room well. And he was like, "You really want to be eating that cake right now?" And she threw it at him. But I was just like, how many times, right? And we do the same things as moms to ourselves. Forget
yeah,
anyone else chastising us. We eat the birthday cake and they're like, "Well, geez, I shouldn't have done that. I might as well keep eating it though, because now I've blown it."
yeah,
That's the type of human psychology that we have to start rewriting and re-challenging and teaching everybody in the home. Look, if mom doesn't get the Oreos, you really shouldn't be bringing them in either, because if they're not good for her, they're not good for you. And start having
yeah,
that consistency, right? And it's not just kids that we're telling to eat the vegetables. Mom and dad need to be eating the vegetables,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
The,
yeah,
the hypocrisy we like to have as humans is profound.
yeah. Do as I say, not as I do.
100%. Because, like, I wouldn't possibly have any bad outcomes of that bad habit, but you're going to have every bad outcome, right? That's the way our brains think. And the truth is, yeah, no, we're in the same ship. Paddle harder together, not the opposing views.
So, besides the book, you mentioned the TED Talk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is the message you want to resonate with women or even with their spouses
Yeah.
from that talk?
The TED Talk was really, for me, it was realizing that what I had been taught in medical school and believed all of my professional career, when I actually looked at the science, I realized no one intentionally lied to me, but the system has set this up in such a way that I was not going to get the help I needed if I didn't take ownership and action. And that is the same thing that every mom who's had gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, preterm birth needs to know. And so for the listeners who maybe that wasn't their story, but they know someone, friend,
Mm-hmm.
family member, colleague, who that the message I want is just to share the information. So if nothing else, send them the link to the TED Talk so they can listen and learn for themselves. It came from my own experience. My first pregnancy, I had gestational diabetes, and I was a normal weight. I wasn't severely overweight. I actually lived in New York City at the time, and we walk everywhere in New York, right? Like, so I
Yeah.
walked 20 minutes to work, from work, every single day, plus 10,000 steps in the hospital. And I get gestational diabetes. I'm like, okay, what gives? So, internal medicine, we treat diabetes. So, not too unfamiliar with the idea of it, but the way as you go through the system as a pregnant mom, you may or may not need insulin, you may or not need medicine, they have you monitor, you do all these extra things, and then baby's born. Oh, glucose is normal. Okay, it's gone. Bye. And the truth is that that mom is never at normal risk until she's 5 years out with no other pregnancies and no other gestational diabetes. So imagine now I've had a second kid, and then I have the twins, and all three of those pregnancies are gestational diabetes. So each time the clock keeps resetting. And what inevitably happens is moms don't know they're at risk. So they go back to doing what they've always done, not realizing that what they've always done was already not correct for their body. And so as you get older, your pancreas already doesn't want to keep working as well as it did when you were younger. And it's just like, all right, you want to be resistant to insulin? Let's be resistant to insulin. Let's develop prediabetes. Let's go full blow and get the diabetes on board, right? That's what's going to happen. But the choice we get to make is to say, I don't want that story. I know that that's the story that's written, and I get to intervene. But I only get to intervene if I know I can, and if I know there is a story that's being written. And so, what I want people to know is pregnancy is not the end of the story. It's telling you what problems mom can have. And when mom fails the pregnancy stress test, if you will, we know we ought to be plugging these moms into high interventions early. But that's not, there's so many systemic problems. Like, you can know this, but what if the mom doesn't go? Well,
Right.
she's lost to follow up, is what we say. But the problem is, by the time she comes back into the medical system in the ER because her glucose is 500, she's full blown diabetes. And now we're dealing with all the ramifications of that. Plus, for the last however many years, she's been teaching our children to eat like she eats, right? And I don't say this to blame or shame moms. I say this because this is the reality of the women I take care of. And there are many dads who step into the role of chef and chauffeur and all the things, and I applaud them. But for the purpose of what I'm discussing is moms do often have a unique role where they work full-time in or outside their house, and then they have the full-time job they don't get paid for. And that is a tough situation when you're telling someone, hey, guess what? You don't do anything, you're going to have diabetes within 5 years. You don't do anything, you're going to die before you're 60 from a heart attack. Oh, well, too bad, so sad. Like, how can people not feel overwhelmed by that information? But that is how our system right now has left it. And we've left it at the doorstep of patients and expected them to do something with this information, but we haven't actually truly educated them. I never was told, as a doctor, I was never told I needed to have follow up for my gestational diabetes after my first or my second pregnancies. I was never told when I went in to first my OB at 6 weeks and say, hey, I know I had gestational diabetes. What do I need to do to prevent it? I was never told to do anything different except we'll go follow up with your primary. I go see my primary, and he's like, your weight's normal, your labs are normal, nothing more to do. And that's the story that most women are told. And that's the story I go on record in the TED Talk of saying, and I say today again, that is not normal. If you've had these problems, you need to be working with somebody who will aggressively help you reverse them, because the pregnancy was a gift. Even though things didn't go how you wanted, the pregnancy was the gift in telling you have a problem coming and you have a chance to intervene.
Wow. Well, I'm just picturing that with one of our kids, because my wife, Marilyn, she's, man, 106 pounds soaking wet, and was, I mean, she's still 45 years later, she could fit in her wedding dress
It's
type
amazing.
deal, and yeah, other, she's teasingly, she has girlfriends that go, really rag on her. I hate you,
Uh-huh.
just to mess with her,
Who's
or
thinking 99% of women
yeah,
out there hearing this are hating
yeah,
her right now?
yeah, and but the one of the kids, I can't remember which one it was, but the doctor's like, man, you're not gaining enough weight, and because like I think the most she ever gained was at this point in time, it was like, man, maybe 15 or 20 pounds
Yeah.
type deal. And we had 8 pounders. I mean, we had an eight pound, 10 ounce kid, and she
Wow.
only gained, 18 pounds during pregnancy kind of deal. But she had this one OB. She had different OBs because our insurance kept changing because of my job and all that kind of stuff. So she's on a different OB, and this doctor tells her, "Yeah, you need to eat ice cream every night before you go to bed." And now you're talking about diabetes and everything. It's like, and she doesn't have diabetes, didn't have she didn't have any issues other than the lazy uterus on the first one. Uh, but I'm thinking, yeah, some doctors telling their
Yeah.
patients, eat a gallon of ice cream every night. You need to pack on more weight for this. I'm like, and the whole, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it mindset.
Correct.
So
Correct.
how do we get doctors and mothers to think differently in order? Because the progression goes, everything begins with the thought. Your thoughts create attitudes, which is a settled way of thinking,
Right.
and those attitudes are displayed in behaviors. Repeated behaviors become habits, and then habits become what you expect and accept in the way of thinking, talking, and acting. So
Right.
if we're going to change that end, we need you to change how you're talking and acting, particularly acting. We got to start with, we got to get you to change how you think. How do we do that in the setting as
Yeah.
that you were talking
Yeah.
about?
So I 100% agree with you on that progression of your thoughts become your actions, outcomes, etc. I start differently and work backwards to thoughts. And so most people aren't even trained to necessarily be aware of their thoughts in a meaningful way. Some people will talk about meditation and mindfulness, and that all has its place. But most of us don't even realize how much we're talking to ourselves every day. The thoughts that we have, we don't catalog them, we don't record them, we don't study or be thoughtful about our thoughts. So the way I find it more helpful is to say, what are the results you're getting? What are the results you want? And is there a difference? If you're getting the results you want, great, keep going on what you're doing. It's working for you. But most people I see are coming to me and saying, I'm not getting the results I'm wanting.
Mm-hmm.
I can't lose the weight. I don't feel like myself. I feel like my whole world isn't working. And they blame whatever health outcome it is, when again, that health is just the symptom of what their original thoughts were. It's a result. And if we start to be neutral in our thinking about the results we're getting and stop judging them and saying, okay, you want to lose 50 pounds. What does 50 pounds look like? Not what do you eat differently or how do you exercise differently, but what does it look like in your daily life? Oh, it looks like you can go to the park with your kids and not be winded. It looks like you can fit into the clothes that you enjoy wearing. It looks like you have the energy to go do that community service you want. That's what health looks like to you. Okay, well, how do we get there? So
Ah,
I work backwards from results, and I make people define results, and they don't like this. I didn't like it when I was at this stage of learning about this, but when you start to say, I need to define what results mean, what success looks like, it takes a long time. You cannot do that in a 15-minute visit. You can't even do that well in an hour visit, right? It takes reflection. So then you have to say, well, I don't have the time to do that. Well, you got to create the time. You want different results, you got to create the time. So I actually make people schedule thinking time on their calendar every week.
yeah.
They have to have at least one day, if not a little bit every day. And we set up those very basic foundations because if you don't schedule it, we all know it won't happen,
All right.
right? And if you don't account for the time it takes to get there, if I have to be at my doctor's appointment at 2 o'clock and I'm leaving my house at 1:50 and they're an hour away, well, gee, we all know how that's going to work out.
Yeah.
But we all think we can get there in 10 minutes, right? So we have to start being really honest with what are the facts. What can no one argue with in a court of law, right? Like that's what I tell my kids. Are like, this is not fair. I'm like, no, let's talk about what's fair. What in a courtroom do they say? What are the facts? Not how did you feel? Not what do you wish happened? What do you think happened when somebody said this? What are the facts? And when you start saying, here's the facts, it becomes neutral. And neutral things anyone can work with. because there's no emotion connected to them. So if
Right.
it's not working for me, I feel a lot better about giving up because now I can see, hey, it's not giving me the results I want. I want to create this new result. Okay, well, what is the thinking that has to happen? And you work backwards to get that result. What are the habits you have to have? What are the behaviors that have to be in place?
Right.
What has to be different? What are the actions, the attitudes, and then the thoughts?
Wow. Wow. One of the things that you said just triggered in me. How often do we use time as either a crutch or an excuse to do or not do something, when
Yes.
in reality, it's not a time issue.
Mhm.
It's a thinking issue. It's a behavioral issue. And I had a doctor on just a week ago. I recorded with him, Dr. Len Lopez, and he was saying, we have over 50,000 thoughts a day,
Isn't that
and
wild?
80% of them are negative thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know, man, I want to have you back on and and talk, maybe, or address, or we give some thought to. We can do this offline to have a little conversation. But I teach law enforcement. I'm a certified expert and a subject matter expert in interacting with people with disabilities from a law enforcement perspective. How do, in your world and all the things you're talking about in the world of pregnancy,
Mhm.
how complicated can that get when your patient is on the autism spectrum? And it doesn't even have to be anything
Yeah.
outlandish, but ADD or ADHD or compulsive, all those kinds of
All the
things.
neurodivergent
Oh
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're neurodivergent and not neurotypical, and I don't think there really is such a thing as neurotypical anymore. As the
Well,
more and more I get into it, we're all neurodivergent to an
yes.
extent, but in the medical world,
Right.
they've created spectrums and this, that, and the other thing.
Mhm.
Uh, so man, there's I would love to
Yeah.
talk with you offline and go, hey, is this something you're researching, looking into, or your personal experience? Because more and more we interact with people that 85% of neurodiversity is hidden,
Yes.
and we don't know what to do or say when we
Right.
encounter it.
Mhm.
So I think that would be a great topic to jump on down the road. But to kind of wrap this up, because time, where yeah, we all,
Where does it go?
yeah, I'm kind of cracking on you a little bit. Is what's some final kind of parting things that really want our audience to go, oh, aha, that makes
Mhm.
sense,
Yeah.
and how can they reach out and connect with you to learn more, do more?
Yeah. So, you asked me earlier, how does faith play into this? And as we were talking about our thoughts, the Apostle Paul writes, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that truth, I think, transcends all of us into just as humans. We have to take action, we have to be intentional. What we do in our actions is just as important as what we don't do in our inactions. Both give
Wow.
us results. And so if you're listening and thinking, yeah, I got that, I can do it on my own, you're right, you can. But it'll take a lot longer and it'll be a lot more clunky. So, finding someone who can work with you and meet you where you are, there are people all across this country who could help. Certainly, my team is amazing. I would brag on them all day long. There's so many people, though, that are trained to help you go further from where you are faster and in a more meaningful way. So if you want results, then you need to do things differently. If you don't like the results you're getting, you need to do things differently. And that is the easy part. The hard part's actually doing the work. And so, again, I didn't get here overnight. I am still very much learning and growing,
Yeah.
but it took me years to get to this point. And hopefully, this has been helpful to some of your listeners in sharing the wisdom that I've learned. To get a hold of me, certainly you can just go to our website, vitalitymwc.org, or you can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I hate TikTok for what it's worth, but yes, TikTok, we're on there. LinkedIn, most of those, my handle's at Dr. Amy Tiffany. Postpartum Pivot is on Amazon. It's, I believe, able to be used in the Kindle program, or you can get the 99-cent ebook. If you would like a hard copy, you can buy it online, or you can contact my office and we'll ship it to you free. Just pay shipping and handling. But we wanted to get this message. My goal is that 1,000 women get this book this year. So help me meet this goal. Get it into the hands of somebody you know who can benefit. And we can really redefine what success as a mom looks like, redefine what it looks like to be a working mom, whether you're working inside your house or not, and what it means to be successful in our marriages and in our relationships and our communities and our faith.
Oh man, awesome, awesome. You have to come back. We're
Okay.
gonna talk some more and dive in even deeper.
I
So
love it.
hey, to our listeners today, thank you for being here today. You guys are what makes us a success, and we really appreciate you. And congratulate yourselves. We're on 6 continents, over 14 countries now, and we're only 9 months on the air. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And as I always share at the end of every episode, this parting message: always, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. Until next time, be safe, be a warrior, be a servant, be a leader. Love you all.